All right, so I want to talk about the Wuhan laboratory and coronavirus. I think it's time and it's important. So, when the coronavirus first came out, back in when I heard about it in Asia, I was living in Asia, and it was January when it really started to hit. And that was when I hurt my back. So, I had to go to the hospital, but I didn't want to go to the hospital because I knew like there was a lot of basically there was a lot of visitors from China, in Thailand now. So like there was a lot of the rumor was that there was a lot of coronavirus in the hospital. So people said don't go to the hospitals unless you have to, right? And I went to the hospital anyway because I had to. But the thing is back then I called a bunch of friends. One of them was Stuart, and I told him what I thought about the theory about the coronavirus, knowing what I know about China and knowing the things that I heard early, probably before you, because coronavirus started in Wuhan, and Wuhan is near Bangkok. So information got there first, way before it got here. Like we started to hear what was going on and things. And let me go back, because before this started, I already knew a lot of stuff that I'm going to tie in here. Okay, so in what year, I don't know what year it was, but the U.S. Embassy wrote a letter, and I believe it was, you can check this up where it was to. I think it was to the CIA. Anyway, there was a letter that was a public letter, and basically they said that the Chinese laboratory, which is the Wuhan Institute of Virology, was practicing unsafe sex. No, not unsafe sex, but they were like basically not following the protocol that was necessary to test and control diseases at the same time, right? They were being sloppy. It was like super sloppy. And they said this is like very, very dangerous. And so this is way before the outbreak. This is at least a couple years, 4 years before the outbreak. So I read that and I was terrified because I knew the way that China grew. The way that China grew is it's all tied in. Okay, it's all tied in. So my doctor that did my circumcision, he never went to medical school. So he learned on the job. He got basically school closed when he was in junior high school because of the Cultural Revolution. And so they still needed doctors, right? So he decided he wanted to be a doctor, and he wanted to be a doctor when he was in junior high. So what he did was he basically, at the time they closed most schools. I think they closed all schools for a period of time. China is a huge place, so it's pretty complicated when it comes to stuff like this. So you say, oh, they closed the schools, and somebody from one town will say, no, that's not true, because it's China is incredibly diverse. But basically what they did in the Cultural Revolution is they closed the schools. And the reason why is because they were persecuting people that were educated. So if you spoke foreign languages, if you wore glasses, if you were a teacher, then you were a target. You were, and landlords, right? Basically, there was like two, like the educated class. And then, so they killed a lot of people, even at good schools like Zhejiang University. There was a mass, like there was one particular day, uprising with the students. Nobody knows what happened because it was never written down, but they know that all the teachers, or some of the teachers, were kind of chased into one corner, and obviously they were killed, but there was no documentation of this. And because this was encouraged by the government, this was a way for Mao Zedong to consolidate power. So he used the uneducated, the lower class, in order to take over, basically, in order to gain power. So just like you might run for office and you might, you might appeal to a certain type of person to get your power base, your voting base. That's what he did. But he did it with the uneducated, which was a brilliant strategy, by the way, because that was where the power was. The power was in the countryside. And that's one key thing to understand about China. If you want to understand China, the power in a lot of Asia, actually, same in Thailand, a lot of the reason why the king and why everybody does the way they run things is because the people in the countryside, there's always a lot of people in the countryside, and they still have a lot of power. So it's a balance. And basically Mao Zedong started from Yan'an, right? That's where the success started with the Communist Party. So they persecuted educated people. So even people like the best, people often say the best Chinese chefs, the best Chinese food is outside of China. The reason why that is because the educated people, the educated chefs, they left back then. So they went to Taiwan, they went to Japan, they went to London, they went to the US. And so a lot of the five-star hotels and the chefs, they all got out because they knew they were going to be a target too. So people got out, but the ones who didn't get out, they're the ones who really got screwed. They got really screwed. And there was a couple of buildings where they kind of put educated people into. One of them was the Embankment building on the Suzhou River in Shanghai, which is a beautiful, beautiful structure. But anyway, they put a bunch of intellectuals together in like total poverty. They ridiculed them. They like made them wear dunce hats. People kicked them. People you can look at the pictures from the 60s, but it was kind of like maybe like when you were in the old days, if you were a bad student in the corporal punishment days, you just got ridiculed and kicked around, like literally kicked around, and then you had to wear the dunce hat, sit in the corner, and you had to apologize, and people were smearing mud on your face, and it was really asinine stuff. But that's what happened. That's exactly what happened. So when this all went down, okay, so it affected China. Obviously, it had huge effects. Now, this is not a bash type of episode. This is like going to be I'm going to really, whether you love China and you're a China nationalist or, whatever side you're on, you're going to enjoy this because this is the truth. This is basically breaking down how it all goes down. So that affected a lot of things because what happened when China, this is very unique, this episode, by the way, because I'm putting a lot of things together. So what happened is that because people were not educated, because schools were shut down for so long, because people fled, like educated people fled China, when China decided to open up, when Deng Xiaoping decided to open up China, he had a very difficult decision because where do you go if you don't have the intellectuals? Where do you go if you don't have the educated? Where do you go? You might have smart people, but they're not educated, right? They're clever, but they haven't been through, basically, standardized schooling, right? So what do you do? How do you build a society? How do you make nuclear power plants? How do you do surgery? How do you, make a military, right? So what China did was, which worked out very well, by the way, most of the time, that's the key thing, most of the time. And I would say it was a good strategy overall. But what they did was they basically said, you're going to learn on the job. And while we went the other direction, the US and the West, we went the direction of certifications, licenses, boards, and official ways to prove that you knew something, right? You had to be part of a society. You had to have a certain degree. We went that way of proving that you could do a job, right? The Chinese they had no choice, right? So when they decided to go from total poverty, to a rich nation was what their goal was, which they pretty much reached already, even though it's not obviously per capita, but as a nation, they definitely reached it. How did they do it? They said, okay, basically what they did was they called, it was kind of funny because in many ways you're going to like the Chinese way when you listen to this. They said, look, this shit's not that complicated. You can do this shit. You can run a nuclear power plant. You can do surgery. You can fly an airplane. 80% of the pilots when I lived in China had never been to aviation school. Now it's changed. Now it's 10 years later, and more people have now, there's more official pilots who've been through pilot school. But China basically said, And I think most Chinese people have this opinion. And by the way, I love this about Chinese people. They're just like, fuck it, we can do it. Fuck it, we will figure it out. We will show me how to do it, and I will do it. And if you ever hire people in China, which I did, by the way, and I paid a lot of salaries, and I did this. I'm not talking out of my ass here. I put people on tough jobs, and because they had survived, the society had survived this very, very rough period, the Great Leap Forward, all these periods, they really got very resourceful. So Chinese can basically get things done. Now it's going the other way now, because now Chinese are all going to Harvard, all the top, parents, students they're kind of going the other way. But I'm talking about until, let's say, it's still this way by and large in China, but it is kind of shifting, which is interesting too. But you could just give them stuff to do and they would figure it out. And they didn't have any kind of inferiority complex. They were just like, oh, let's stick this with that. Let's add this to this. And now they were obviously, along with this comes stealing technology. But here's the thing, is what is stealing technology? Because a lot of people in the West, if you're an inventor, if you're in anything in IP, you will realize that the Western IP system is not perfect. In fact, it kind of sucks, because what it does is it kind of protects inventions too much. It's too rigid. And so it doesn't allow, like, for example, I could invent something that changes the world. So I could invent a nuclear fusion something, right? That would totally make essentially free energy. And then I could say, no, fuck the world. I'm not going to let you use this. And then I'm just going to let it take to my grave. And then basically the world has an energy crisis and people die. And as we need more and more energy, just because one guy doesn't want to share his invention, right? That's just one example, but it's just so rigid because society needs certain things, right? And what we need is we need a more modern, robust, flexible IP management system. So the Chinese immediately saw, well, number one, they didn't have any patents in China, so they had no choice. Like when you're behind, okay, like if you're coming from the fucking ghetto, you might do some fucking shoplifting to get going. You know what I'm saying? Like you are not living in the suburbs. You're not living in Beverly Hills. What are you going to do to get going? You might go to fucking Salvation Army, steal some fucking clothes, right? You might go and steal some books at the school to get your books, right? Because you need to, right? And so China, they didn't have patents. So what they did was they stole patents, right? But through the stealing of patents and through the borrowing of patents and all that, the Chinese kind of realized it was kind of bullshit. Like our own ignorance and our inability to change is what opened this whole thing up, is what I'm saying. Like our patent system needed a revamping, but because we didn't do it, and then we just basically blind eye. And this theme is going to come up again in this podcast. Our blind eye allowed the Chinese to feel justified in stealing all of our stuff. Now, stealing all of our stuff was not cool, but borrowing and opening. So, for example, let me give an example. So, what teeth whitening? A lot of people like teeth whitening. Now, I don't like teeth whitening. I think it hurts your enamel. It's bullshit. But better to eat good food, eat celery, eat cabbage that naturally cleans your teeth. Take care of your health. You won't have stained teeth, blah, 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 blah. But anyway, a lot of people buy teeth whitening, right? So the dentist had teeth whitening. They had it patented. And what happened was the Chinese stole it. So instead of paying like $300 to get your teeth whitened, now for $20 you can buy a little package at CVS that will, you can whiten your teeth on your own. Now, there was no reason why you couldn't whiten your teeth on your own for the beginning. You didn't need a doctor to come and give you a hand job and then give you teeth whitening and take 4 hours, right? Waiting in line, making reservations, insurance, the lady in the front, air-conditioned offices. None of that was necessary. It was because of the stupid patent system. So the Chinese stole it and they made it $20. And the Western consumers, we're not idiots. I mean, by and large, like, we want change. We're like, that's dumb that you have to pay $1 million to get your fucking teeth whitened when you can do it yourself. This is not rocket science, but this is the dumb system we had. So the Chinese saw this. They saw the incongruities and they said, well, the Westerners, they're going to buy this because they know it's stupid. So we'll just steal it and sell it to them. And CVS is going to look the other way and everybody's going to ignore it. And you right now are ignoring it. When you walk down to CVS, you're not like slapping a lawsuit on them because they're selling stuff that's totally breaking patents right now. 80% of the batteries in the things that you use right now are breaking a Japanese patent. Your 80% of everything you use as a battery is breaking a patent from Japan, guaranteed. I've seen a study, but who's going to file a thing on it? You're not going to, because you know society needs this, right? So because of this dumb inflexibility, inability to change on our part, we let the up-and-comer come in and just take everything. Because taking everything was not cool either. That was not cool. Taking everything, that was not cool. But inflexibility and not letting inventions go to the masses and not changing, that was our fault. So we set it up, our inflexibility, right? So all this is related to Wuhan lab, big time. All of this, okay? So my doctor did my circumcision with no training, no medical school. And he was a fantastic doctor. And I read in Syria, I think it was in Syria, there was a doctor who, he had all the he had all the videos of how to do surgery. His son was 8 years old and he watched the videos. So he watched the videos and then he did surgery on somebody with after watching the videos, and he did it successfully. And the thing is, surgery is relatively easy to do. The only thing is, the problem is complications. So when you have one of those rare complications, that's where the real difficulty comes, because you really got to know what you're doing when things go wrong in surgery. So as long as you just tie this tube and connect this to this, you're all good. So this 8-year-old kid, he did a surgery and it was all good. No problem. Perfect surgery, just like the book. And the thing is we're stuck between these two things, that there's this complication time when you need a serious expert. And there's a time when an 8-year-old can just watch a fucking video and do a perfect surgery, right? And that balance is, we're not striking this balance very well. We're just not striking this balance. And there's another factor, it's going to be in here later. Okay, so what is the Wuhan lab? I'm going to tie this in later. I'm going to make you wait because it's important. Okay, so what is the Wuhan lab at the core? The Wuhan lab is a building, okay? No one talks about the building. I'm going to talk about the building because it's important. And I did the real estate business in China, so I actually know about buildings in China. And this is going to be very interesting, and I guarantee you have not heard this anywhere else. Okay, so the Wuhan lab is a building, okay? Now, you might say, well, yeah, it's a building, but who cares, because buildings are just buildings. It's not just a building. It's a very, very specific type of building with airlock doors. There's like 4 doors. It's called a P4 laboratory, right? And so there's only a few P4 laboratories in the entire world. And the Wuhan lab is a P4 laboratory. And that means it's the highest level of security for viruses, so they can't get out of the laboratory. So these laboratories are like, they are almost like, they are basically on the level of a nuclear bomb. You don't just give a nuclear bomb to some, say, hoodlums or some gang or the Crips and the Bloods. You don't just give them a fucking nuclear bomb, because they can use that and do such incredible damage, right? A P4 lab allows you to make things. It's a very unique building because of the way it is. It allows you to do things that can basically destroy the entire world. All humanity could die because of a P4 lab. Even today. Could happen tomorrow. A disease could be invented that just kills all people. Just goes from person to person. We could all die because of a P4 lab. Don't kid yourself. Could totally happen. Okay, so what is a P4 lab? P4 lab is very difficult to make. It's a very complicated structure. It's based on hundreds of years of science and understanding of disease, how they spread, how air moves. And so the P4 laboratory was something that you didn't just let somebody build a P4 lab. The plans for a P4 lab were very high, very classified. Okay, so back, I don't know how many years ago it was, but I remember when this whole thing went down, by the way. Okay, back, let's say 15 years ago, whenever it was built, France decided that they were going to share the P4 lab technology with China. Now, this was French. A lot of this can be traced back to the French. The COVID can be traced back to the French because of this, in my mind. You can listen to my logic and you can tell me what you think. It's not, obviously, there's not one person at fault, but France plays a major role in COVID-19. No one's talked about this. Okay, so France decided that China was trustworthy and they were going to do a P4 lab. Okay, now, they decided a lot of very naive things because they did not understand that anything powerful, any tool in China that is very powerful is going to be controlled by the CCP. And it's all the government. And it's also going to be controlled, the military is going to have access to it. If you give a nuclear bomb to somebody in China, you're an absolute fool if you don't think the PLA is going to get it. And that's what happened. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. So the French made this very naive decision and also this could even go back to the international community because the international community did not have a agreement on what could be shared with who at this level. Like we have rules for certain technologies that cannot be shared. So for example, very quiet fans, very quiet, and things like that cannot be shared with certain countries because they have military applications. So Toshiba president got taken down, and he was my friend's, actually, I don't know if he was her uncle or great uncle, I don't know. But anyway, the president of Toshiba had to step down because they sold very quiet motors to submarines back in the 80s to the Russians. And so because that was a military technology, Toshiba sold that. And it was a big scandal back then. So there's certain technologies that you can't export, right? P4 laboratory technology needs to be that kind of thing right fucking now. The French, because the international community did not have an agreement that everybody had to agree on it, the French, who have a very, very wonderful science history, had total ability just on their own with no one else watching over. People just saying, they gave them advice. They said, look, that might not be a good idea, but they couldn't stop them, right? I think right now we need to say that export technology, the P4 lab technology, but it's probably the horses out of the barn, but now. Because now they're going to build like 80 new P4 labs in China. That's what I read, 81 new labs they have on planned. Okay, something like that. It's just a huge amount. Okay, so
Figure out what happened last.
So the French decided they basically bought the Chinese said, look, the military will never have access to this lab, and the government will never have access. And the French said, okay, we will build this. We will give you the plans and we'll oversee the building of this, but only if the French control this for like 100 years or something. There was some kind of time the French were going to control it. And the Chinese said, no problem. You can control this. No problem. Now, let me tell you what I know in real estate, how this is related. So back to the P4 lab is a building. Okay, now most of the buildings in Shanghai, they're beautiful architecture. Most of those designs of those buildings were stolen. Okay, so, or somehow ripped off. I mean, that's my term. You can listen and you can tell me what you think. What they will do is how they got those buildings. The Chinese did not really, there was actually one really wonderful Chinese architect, but he did not really do any of these skyscrapers. But besides him, there was basically nobody who was, they didn't have any tall buildings. I mean, when I got to China, there was no tall buildings. The tallest buildings were basically colonial buildings that were built by the British, by the Germans, by the Americans, right? And so they didn't have like skyscraper technology. So of course they had no designers, they had no architects that could make them, right? And especially they couldn't make something creative. With Shanghai, they wanted to have a blockbuster skyscrapers. They wanted to have a blockbuster skyline, which they got. Well, how did they do that? They got it by, and anybody who lives in China is going to be just rolling when you hear this because it's so true. So what they did was they basically, there's two ways. So they said to like architectural firms. So let's say Sean here's got an architectural firm. So Sean, you made, some wonderful building, the Pompidou Center in France or something. And we said, okay, we want you to make the new, art, the new MoMA museum, so you design this. And then you say, okay, fantastic. No problem. I'll do that. Here's what we charge and here's, and they say, well, that's great, but we need to see some samples because we don't really believe that you're that good. You might have lost your touch. You need to really show us some samples. So you start making a few samples and say, well, there's not quite enough details here. We need a little more detail here on this part and that part. Yeah, little safety features. Yeah. There's kind of like a little detail there, here and there. And then you're like, basically like, okay, here's the dialogue inside the French Design Center. He's like, hey, listen, we're talking about back in the 90s, early 90s, right? So you're like, look, the Chinese don't have any tall buildings. So there's no way they can really steal this design because they don't know what they're doing. They need us. They need us to finish this building because, there's no way they can make a building this big and this tall, this advanced. Their workers have no training. Their architects have no training. School, there's nothing back to the schools were closed thing. There's no way they're going to be able to steal this design. So just go ahead and give them quite a bit of detail. It's going to be fine. So they give them the detail. And the Chinese are like, we'll have to think about this design, And they go to another company. They get a bunch of designs and together, put them all together. And they got themselves enough that they can hand it to some very clever Chinese guy who's, very, very clever dude who didn't really go to school, but he's just a clever motherfucker. And he's going to put them all together. And he's like, I can do it, boss. And the communist boss is like, go do it. And this is one thing I really love about China is that they just have this can't do it attitude. And the guy's out there, he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. He's got, things are falling down. People are getting killed. Definitely accidents are happening. But they got it done. They got the building done. And that was one after the other. So they either paid, let's say, like Sean's architect firm was, Pompidou Center, very advanced, very, technology. They knew what they're doing. That's one type of thing. And then they would just take the design. They would get the sample and they would take the design. Now, the other example is Gabe here. Gabe's here. And Gabe is an up-and-coming architectural student at some advanced, let's say, architectural institute in the West. Now, Gabe is, let's say, you're American and you just really want to make a name for yourself. You're a student and you're advanced and you're smart. What the Chinese Communist Party did was basically say, look, we think that, you can put in a bid for these buildings too. So then, they get all the top students to start making these designs. Now, the brilliance here is that the students in the West, because of our rigidity, we have these like wealthy, successful architecture companies that kind of like patents. They kind of take the lion's share. They kind of steal from those designers. Okay, so they saw the arbitrage here, right? They saw the arbitrage between the scumbag company, who wasn't really scumbag, but like they're the ones who are kind of taking from you, the architectural student who's coming up with the designs, and they're the ones who are taking it, right? Just like was it Edison? Edison stole all from his students, right? He was not Tesla. Tesla did it himself. He was a genius. But Edison basically had everybody working for him, and then he basically ripped them off and patented himself. So the Chinese said, well, we're going to go for those students. So you present something. Now, the reason why I know this is because I was in real estate in China for 10 years. And those students, those Gabes of the world, rented rooms from me. I know these guys. Like no one else, I know these guys. They stayed up in my room. Like these stories I heard firsthand. So what you're getting here in this podcast is totally unique. Like you're not nowhere else, like literally nowhere else. So these students were like basically, if any of the guys who were in my rooms are listening, you guys got to contact me. But okay, so you came over and they promise you basically to pay you well. And, so when you get over, of course, what happens? You were promised like a 5-star hotel, but it's a 3-star hotel. You were promised, this many staff, but it's this many staff. You were promised, maybe this, but you got this. But it's still pretty good, right? It's still pretty good. Like as a young student whose design is going to be. Now here's the other big difference between Sean and Gabe. Sean has to get paid, okay? Because he's got to get fucking paid. He's got staff to feed. He's got buildings he's got leases. He's got lawyers. He needs money. Gabe's in another position. If Gabe makes a building that is made in Shanghai, even if Gabe gets totally cheated and doesn't get paid at all, but he just gets a fun time in China, gets laid a few times, and then his building is made in China, Gabe won. So he's not really going to complain that much. And the Chinese correctly figured that out, is that the students, no matter how smart they were, their demands were pretty fucking low. They get a few Chinese girls, they're fucking happy. They get a fun time. Their building's up in Shanghai. They can show people, and their building becomes real. Like it actually, then they can go back and get an architect a job at Sean's firm, or they can start their own company, right? So the students, kind of entered their design. And of course, a lot of them got ripped off like Sean. Like sometimes designs were so good, they just got ripped off. Just like Sean, like the same kind of thing. Like, thank you very much. And they used it themselves. Other times they wanted the guy to come over because he could provide value, right? For very low cost, right? So then the students would come over and they would basically oversee it. And the Chinese workers were very interesting too. The workers that made those skyscrapers, the West, and you listening, you forgot where you're from. You forgot your history, because we are more like China than you think. If you look back at the Industrial Revolution, go back and look at the pictures of the workers of the skyscrapers in New York, like those buildings. Those guys were uneducated, and they were building the most advanced buildings in the world. But they were just winging a prayer. They were just getting it done. People were dying, like in the Hoover Dam. I don't know how many people were buried inside the concrete while they were building it. So we're not so different than China. It's just that we did it like 120 years ago. So we forgot. So while everybody's blaming China, saying they're being dangerous, they're not, respecting the power of these technologies, we did the same fucking thing. We stole from Europe, and also we took enormous risks. We didn't value human life because it was for the good of the society. And this was the correct calculation, actually, for America at the time. Now, as you get wealthier, you care more about things, your life. You care more about your children. When poor people, they'll sell their kids into slavery. See, the thing what people don't understand is that your values change as you get more educated, as you get richer. Like in the 1800s, like there are pictures of when did the camera, when was it invented? Do you guys remember?
1880.
1880. Okay. There's pictures of women selling their own children during the Depression and before that. Like that happened in America because they had too many kids. They needed money, and they just said, "Well, we'll sell a couple kids. We'll get some money and pay give the other kids food, and the other kids will get bought by somebody with money. So that's going to work out fine." That was their thinking back then. We came from a place that we forget. That's why we don't understand China. We are a very ingenious, clever people too. We were. That's why we grew so fast. The Europeans never thought America could do this. They never thought they thought we were too savage. We weren't going to be able to figure it out. We did exactly what China did, basically. And so it's just a different era, right? And so basically, and that goes down to Chinese, Italian wine. We stole the grapes, tea, the East Indies trading companies stole the tea from China. They stole the tea and they brought it to India, and they started growing in India, and that's how they became so rich, was stealing the tea technology, and then because they took it from one country that had this very expensive tea, was very expensive, and then they grew it in India where it was very cheap, and they paid pennies to the ton, and they sold it in London for huge money. That's how they made their money, and they stole the leaves, right? So all of this is like old dramas, and it's all based on arbitrage of rigid structures and stuff, right? So it's all connected, right? So the buildings, the architects, it's very related to the P4 building because all the Chinese did. Okay, now here's how it went down. So the French agreed that they were going to control this laboratory for like 100 years or something, right? And that was it. You can go back and read all the stuff I'm talking about. So the French were going to be in charge of the laboratory. Now, I knew all this before coronavirus. Okay, so none of this is new to me. I'm not making this up. A lot of podcasts, people just read blogs and tell you shit. And they're like, well, I didn't know much about the Yakuza before this, but now I'm making this episode rehashing things that I don't know now. Like, no, this is like deep knowledge, old knowledge. And I'm tying it in, right? So, and there's value in that. There's value in knowing things. Like, God damn it, there's value in fucking knowing things. There's value in understanding the world because it helps you to structure your understanding of the world in other situations. It gives you basic understanding of knowledge and how logic kind of branches out so that you can kind of take that basic thinking, not the same topic, but and you can go to the next thing. And as you get older, you're going to be able to put things together because you'll say, oh, that's like that. This is what's going on here. This is why they don't understand it. Oh, that happened before. Humans did this before. It's like that's how you get that kind of understanding, right? So anyway, the French were so naive. I got to say, the French have a big part in this because they were so dumb. They just said, people warned them that this was a fucking nuclear weapon and that it was going to become in the hands of the PLA, which it is now. Okay. And so the French came over. They basically handed the plans off. And as soon as they handed the plans off, that was the beginning of the French leaving. Because they basically, I don't remember exactly what the way they did it. You can read about it. It's all documented. But basically, they got rid of the French very, very quickly. They never even lasted through half the construction. They were gone. And they were supposed to run the place for 100 fucking years. Something like that. Something crazy. This was an ironclad thing. You did not give a P4 fucking laboratory without controlling what was done inside that lab because it's so dangerous. And even today, we could all die because of this mistake. I'm not saying we will. I'm not fear-mongering. But look, it is true. This can create disease that destroys all life on Earth. I'm not saying it will. It can. This is a very advanced, dangerous laboratory. Okay, that's out of the way. I'm not saying it's going to happen. A lot of things can happen. We can get hit by a comet and all die. Okay, so I'm not saying it will, but I'm just saying you have to know that it is possible. That's how dangerous it is. It's not like, oh, this will hurt China. No, this could hurt you. This could hurt your dog and your family, everybody, right? Okay, so back. Now, here's the second mistake the French made. The French, because of greed and companies in China, did not really protest. The French should have been out on the fucking streets, pulling people by the throat, telling people, this is outrageous. The P4 laboratory must not be built. Anything must be done to stop this. This is a very dangerous situation. This was got under very ill-gotten gains. The risks are enormous. The French were bought off and bullied off. And they left. And the international community is not without blame because scientists knew what a P4 laboratory was. They fucking knew. And nobody said anything. So the Chinese took it over. Now, obviously, they did a great job building it. It's a very well-built lab. It's a very serious, and this is what people don't understand about made in China. China has two kind of Chinas. You got the made in China that's very bad, and you got the China that's made in China that's the best in the world. They both exist. When China really wants to do something, they can make, because they manufacture everything. Why did the U.S. win World War II? Because of our manufacturing capacity. Why are we going to lose World War III? Because of our manufacturing capacity. Because China is the manufacturer of the world. Whoever is the manufacturer of the world wins in a war because they can make more shit. So you could have one plane that's, let's say, 5th generation. If you have 100 4th generation planes with similarly trained pilots, they are going to wipe out even 25. It's a numbers game. It's like 4th versus 5th and then overwhelming numbers, you're toast. And that's why the Chinese are going to win World War III. And we'll lose. It's a fact. Just like World War II. It's a numbers game. It's just like, are you going to get to be a trillionaire in Vegas? No, because it's a numbers game. Numbers always win. Now, I'm not saying we can't get it back before World War III, which we should, by the way, unless we want to lose the next war, which will happen, because wars are always happen. So do you want to lose or do you want to win? Do you want to be controlled or do you want to be able to do what you want? Do you want the Communist Party to control your life or would you rather not have the Communist Party control your life? Just think about that. Very simple. These are the choices. See, people can't face these hard things. Hard things are too hard. They're too hard. No, that's too hard. Let's put it off. Let's ignore it. P4 lab, no problem. No problem. Okay, so the international community did not regulate it. The French were naive. The French did not protest. The Chinese, you can't really blame them for this part. I mean, what would you do? You're an up-and-coming country. Because here's the thing. You know me. I'm gonna call things like I think. I'm not saying that I don't blame China for anything. I'm just saying, look at this. You're a country who came from nowhere. You're a country who has nuclear plants run by people who didn't go to school. You have 80% of your pilots didn't go to pilot school. And they're doing just fine. Doctors are doing surgery all over the country. They learned, they figured it out. So you're thinking like a P4 laboratory can probably be run pretty well. The guys will figure it out. But a P4 laboratory is not like that. A disease and a virus is invisible. It's not like one airplane crashing or even one nuclear bomb going off. It's one of these things that it just jumps from one person to the next. It can create an unstoppable chain that is absolutely, unstoppable, right? They really had no way of knowing the power of the tool that they stole. It's kind of like a bunch of hoodlums who steal a nuclear weapon. They don't really, or let's just say uranium. There's somebody who stole uranium in Russia and they died, obviously, because they tried to sell it. They got killed while they're waiting, right? Because they killed them, right? They didn't understand it, right? The PLA and the people that were in charge of this laboratory are very smart. Don't get me wrong. These guys are as smart as anybody else, but they just didn't have the experience with viruses. And virus science and viruses, they do now, by the way. And that's the dangerous thing. That's the really scary thing. They do now. And they have kind of in a way more than us because they know how this thing actually spread. We don't, right? But at the time, they didn't really know. And they said, well, we'll figure it out. And guess what? In a way, they were right. In a way, they were fucking right. Because we paid the price. They didn't as much. They now they're planning, okay, I won't go into the political side. Okay, so what's next? Let me think. Okay, so now well, let's see. What don't you know that I was going to add to this? Okay, the SJWs. They are involved and you are involved. Okay, so here's the part you're involved. Okay, I want to tell you a story about Clark Foam, just to put this in. This is kind of will give you an idea. So Clark Foam was a surfboard manufacturer. They made the fiberglass blanks. So Clark Foam was based in California. And I think they were based in my hometown. I'm pretty sure the first one was there. So like 90% of boards were Clark Foam until they went bankrupt on purpose. Okay, so what happened was the California environmental laws got so strict that Clark Little basically said, fuck you. I think it was Clark Little's his name. I don't forget. Anyway, Clark Foam. The guy who owned Clark Foam. He said, basically he was a very kind of red pill kind of guy. So they pushed him too far. Now he's wealthy as fuck. He's been making surfboards since the 60s. He's got more money than he can do with it. And he basically said, if you make this last law controlling the manufacturer, because everybody said, look, move to China. You can move your manufacturer, make 10 times more money. And, Clark Foam can be even more successful. But he didn't want to do that. He said, look, I'm a California manufacturer. We're kicking ass. We control all the boards. Why the fuck do we have to go to California? We're giving people a fair price. People are fine with it. No one's catching up to us. And why are you making us leave? Why are you closing down American businesses? And they said, and he said, look, he was really clear, actually. This is true. He actually said, look, if you make this one last law where we can't, it makes it too expensive to make our blanks in California, I'm just going to go bankrupt. I'm going to close the whole place down. And then the environmentalists, the SJWs, were so stupid. They were just like, hey, well, fuck you. He won't do it. They called his bluff. Well, it wasn't a bluff. He actually was telling the truth. So he closed down Clark Foam. So surfboards could not be made for a long time because nobody else could do it. Making a styrofoam blanket is not easy. It wasn't as easy as people thought. And so basically once Clark Foam was closed, like it was real expensive to get a board for a long time. Now, turns out it was good for surfing because a lot of good technologies came out of this, like hollow boards. There was all the epoxy boards. A million new technologies came out of it. And actually, in the end, it was good for surfing, actually. That one manufacturer didn't control everything. So that's the interesting thing. That's very interesting. And this is the complexity of life, right? Like, while I totally disagree with them passing that last law, it turned out to be like a Cambrian explosion of new technologies, right, for surfing, which was good for surfing. So, I mean, like, both are true. The Western way and kind of the old school do-it-yourself way. They're both true. We need a better balance of these two, right? So what happened? So how this is related was we drive technologies out of our country because of laws, okay? But where do they go? They go to other countries. So they're not going away. Clark Foam and all that dirty manufacturing, it just went to China. And they just started making like dirty boards there. And if you believe the environmentalists, you're going to understand this globe is round and that everything's connected and that pollution in China is pollution in New York. So it's just dumb for starters. It's dumb to make them go over there. This is wake the fuck up. When Clark Foam left, they went over there. So it breaks all the rules of even the SJWs and environmentalists, because it's like you're not making, the only way, if they were realistic, they would say no more surfboards can be made by law anywhere in the world. And we will kill, death penalty, anybody who makes a surfboard because this is bad for the environment. That's the kind of law they would need to pass to make any difference. If you believe this is so bad for the environment that you have to destroy all your industries in order to protect the environment, then you need to protect the world because the world is connected, obviously. So China can't make it because that's just going to make pollution over there, which goes in the water and everything. Yeah, it goes in the air and it's all connected. So like they're so dumb. It's all so fucking stupid. They just push them out of America so they can pollute other places, which pollution comes back. And then, of course, the technology comes back and the manufacturer who's going to win the next war because of all these manufacturing technologies, gets better and better. And then you can never compete again because they're so far ahead of you by now. Now they've got like a Cambrian explosions of new technologies being made over in China. It's not just one technology. Because once that one company was broken down, then all of a sudden you had creativity, you had tons of Chinese guys, just tons of like Westerners. All this thing starts again. The whole designing of the Shanghai skyline starts again. That's the designers, the students, and everybody makes new things, and then new things get made. They go over to China, they make it. All this shit happens again, right? And we get a new explosion of technologies, and China gets more and more manufacturing, right? So this all happens over and over again. And it's all our fault. It's all so dumb, right? And so the SJWs and the environmentalists are idiots because of this. But at the same time, I totally agree with them. Because I think that, okay, when I grew up, in a funny way, in the 70s, LA air was terrible. But the SJWs, they're the ones back then. They weren't SJWs then, but basically they were. They said, no, you got to catalytic converters. And they pushed U.S. manufacturers to clean up the air. And now LA's air is nice because of those guys. And this is what I don't like about people. They can't face the facts. The world's complex. Everybody likes clean air. LA's air is clean now because of those guys. And then what happened was, I hated those guys growing up because I saw all the shitty cars. I was born in 65, so all the cool American cars stopped being made in 1971. The last cool Mustang, right, was in 71. Everything went to shit after that because of the catalytic converter and all these new laws. But in the end, we figured it out. And now we have better technologies than ever. Tesla. And if you look at all the latest, active, I think it's Active 6, the Mazda engine, they have all these new technology. Sky Active. Like these new technologies are just incredible. Of the ICE engine technologies. Like things get better when you force them. Necessity is the mother of invention. So by the SJWs clamping down on the dirty air, they forced the manufacturers to have to come up with some solutions, which for a few years didn't work, but in the end they did work. Can you imagine if they wouldn't have done it? They'd still be making diesel. LA would be a total cesspool. Their sulfur content would be out of control. Kids would be getting like asthma way worse than they are now. It would be shit. I remember I used to drive up to this chick's house in Downey, and there was a big sign on the side of the road. This is pre-internet, this is way pre-internet. This is like 80, let's see, what year was this? 80, maybe 86? No, 85, no. No, what am I saying? No. This is 81, 80. I would drive up there, and there was a sign on the side of the road which had pollution in LA. And it was like, is it dangerous or whatever? There's only one way to know is that sign when you're driving up to LA. And that's the only one I knew. There might have been one more sign, but it was like, that's how simple the world was. It was like one sign, And then the word would get around about what that sign said, today. It would be in the newspapers, right? And then you'd read the newspaper, right? And so it said had the different levels of pollution. And it was always terrible. And then what I really hate about both sides is that nobody can admit the truth, is that everybody wants clean air. And we like clean water. And we like healthy kids. And we like good, you know what I mean? Like, this stuff is fucking, we like it. Like, everybody fucking likes it. And we got to find balances to these difficult problems. It's not black and white. It's both, right? It's both. Patents are good. Breaking patents is good. Students getting fucked over is not good. And clever people not being recognized because of patents and society not able to mass market a product that should not be controlled by a few people. That's not good. We need to face these complex issues in a mature way, have mature debate and honest debate in order to, and we need constant updates. It's like Tesla. They do over-the-air updates. We need over-the-air updates. We need robust debate, which is being crushed, by the way, by the SJWs. We need robust debate. This right here is kind of robust debate with no one debating. I'm debating both myself, both sides, right? We need robust debate, and we need constant updates, Constant updates, constant robust updates. And we need the smartest people. We need fair people that are telling the truth. And I think we can do this. I think this is the push right now. This is the movement, the kind of we're doing right now, whether it's about sexes, about marriage, about kids, about technology, about whatever the fuck it is. It's that same thing. It's not, things are not working. And men are like, this is not working. But at the same time, the dumb guys are like, we want it our way. We want men's rights, right? We want women's rights. No, neither one is good. You don't want men's rights. You don't want men to have control. Trust me, you don't want women to have control. Human beings will take advantage. This is the problem. If you ever seen kids, if you give one kid advantage over the other, that kid will fuck the other kids over. He will like hit the kids when you're not looking. He will steal their food. This is human nature. You have to, it's not like the kid is a man. He's a great kid. He's perfect. And the woman, it's a female. She's perfect. No, fuck. Kids, humans, wake up. They need to be watched. There's got to be some way to fucking, you know what I mean? Like both can do wrong. You know, both need, it's so dumb what the guys are pushing for. It's stupid. It will never work. And if it does work, tragedy will strike exactly the same as now, right? It's just like kids and adults. Same. We need mature King Midas. We need Tesla over-the-air updates of ideas, of everything. Society needs to be moving forward with honest, robust debate in the center of society, in the center, where things are like not allowed to be not debated, not allowed to be controlled, not allowed to be sequent, not allowed to be shut down because this is hate speech. Look, a lot of what's being called hate speech is just debate. It's fucking debate of information. It really is not debate. That's the thing. Debate is not hate speech. Debate is an honest attempt to improve things, to make life better, debate is not an attempt to control. It is not the same as a despotic regime, wiping out, genocide. A debate is you're throwing out dangerous ideas. Ideas are dangerous. You're throwing out dangerous ideas, but you're not imposing them on people. You're throwing them out there so they can fight with the other ideas. And in the end, you come out with in the end, after all this fighting of ideas, you come out with a balance, and then you test it out like science. And then it becomes, it gets deemed as needing fixing and updates. And in the end, you find a mature, it's not controlled by either side. Although I will say, never forget the Teslas of the world. Nikola Tesla, he understood this whole fucking thing. So sometimes you do need to pick out these geniuses and allow them to control a lot. Because there are people, they're 1 in a billion. No, they're not 1 in a billion. They're probably 1 in 10 billion. Or they just understand things totally. The Mozarts of the world. And you have to allow them to grow and flourish, because they will come out, they themselves, their understanding of the basic laws of the world in their certain field will beat any debate. They will come out and just say, no, electricity, DC is good at this. AC can go long distances. DC cannot. AC will do this. DC. And he just can lay the whole goddamn thing out. And you don't need all your debates. You don't need all your schools. Because one motherfucker, he has such a deep understanding, intuitive understanding of some process, or you need his idea to be totally listened to. And then out to the world, right? He doesn't get an equal share, that guy, because he's not equal. He has a total understanding of the whole complexities of the ecosystem. And so, again, while I'm saying debate and over-the-air updates, this can be a very stupid way to do it too, because the Teslas of the world, the Mozarts of the world, you don't debate Mozart about what new notes to add to his song. He hears it in his head and he writes it down and it's done. The song is complete. One extra note will ruin that song. He understands everything, he hears it and it's done. So beware of these, of these types of people. And when in your own life, when you're like that, don't hold yourself back. If you are like this in some area, don't be like, oh, in the other areas of my life, I have to be like this. No. I think I'm this way with my thoughts with Ronin Man. I think I just let myself run like a horse because I think I have some ability here. And I'm just going to let it run. I'm not going to debate with people. And this is why Ronin Man is so unique, is because I just let it run, and I don't listen to anybody else about how they should be done, how I should tie it in, because I tie it in with things I think should be tied in. And I just tie them in. And I just that's it. And then I think they work. I think they work. And I always go back. I mean, sometimes I need logic to back things up. But I know I scored, in logic, I scored the highest in my school's history, right? In university. So I know I have certain things I'm quite good at. So I just try to put these things together. And I know my logic is not very practical at times. So it's some weird type of logic. But anyway, I like very complex things like Chinese language. I like weather prediction, things like that, where you're tying in super complex stuff. I like that. Where I don't like details. I won't even remember details. I probably won't even remember this episode when I'm done. People will say, remember you said that? I'm like, I did? That's weird. But anyway, so okay. So you have something like that too, right? So let yourself run in that area where you are the Mozart, where you are the Tesla. Just don't be debating. Don't be following these other rules in this period where you're yourself. Sean, you have your ways, 100%. And just, that might make you very, very fucking rich, just by following that and not listening to one single person, right? Or maybe you can find somebody who you can listen to, right? But they're going to be very hard to find, right? So anyway, so back to the laboratory and the disease. So we had a situation where the SJWs, why did I bring up the SJWs? Because here's the key thing. Okay, this is going to be a big shocker to you. This is all new. So, and this goes all the way to Justin Trudeau and all these motherfuckers. Okay, Justin Trudeau is right now suing to not release information about the P4 lab and tests. Why is that happening? Why is his party doing that? The Liberal Party. Why are Fauci and universities and everybody, why are you not getting an honest account of this virus? And here's the interesting part. We're an hour in, but we're not even started. Okay, this is going to blow your mind. Okay, and the way I present it is going to be unique. Okay, I'll try to do it fast. Okay, here's the motherfucking thing. I should do a part 2, but I'm just going to keep going. Because I know the real people that listen to this, they're going to want the whole thing. Okay, so here's the deal. So we have these arbitrage. And that arbitrage between where we don't see, and the Chinese are taking advantage of that. Well, Westerners are not stupid. They take advantage of it too. So when Clark Foam got kicked out of California, and when at the same time we started kicking out virus research and cloning technology, we said, no, you can't clone disease. You can't clone people. No, you can't test for the disease because they're too dangerous. Well, here's the motherfucker thing. Wake the fuck up. Scientists are going to do it anyway. Okay, now where are they going to do it? They can't do it in their garage because they need a P4 lab. So where are they going to do it? Well, guess who is the most wheeling dealing country in the world when it comes to shit? China. So now they got a P4 lab. And this is not going to be like most videos. Most videos are going to be a conspiracy. They're going to be always everything's conspiracy. No. We're going to get into the story. Okay, the story. So now you say no cloning because cloning is dangerous. Now, the future of technology, a lot of patents, the future of patents is going to be all biotech. Okay, so patents, they control the world. Patents are super powerful. Chinese understand that. So that's why they wanted the P4 lab, because they see the future is going to be biotech patents. And we know this, but we're just too stupid to allow it to happen. I'll give you a little what I think we should have done, we should have P4 laboratories in the U.S. basically whoring themselves out to dangerous teams of scientists, creating viruses that could destroy the world and clone people and destroy the planet. That's what we should do. That's my outcome, is we should do that openly. We should allow the most dangerous people to do the most dangerous things in America right now. And I've been saying this for 20 fucking years. Okay, this is not new. I've been saying we should clone people. We should do these tests. I am not making this up. I've been saying this you can ask Adam. I've known Adam forever. I've been saying this since then because I know the way things work. I know scientists, they need to run like a horse, okay? Just like I need to do my podcast like a horse. They need to run. They need to test. They need to go red line and take chances of destroying humanity. They need to do that to make the next breakthrough in science. And all over the world, you have disease, you have scientists that are raring to go to do these dangerous tests. Now, these dangerous tests are what are going to create a wonderful future for us. Okay, our history is dangerous, guys. When they did the first atomic bomb test, most scientists thought it was going to split the atom of air, the air molecule, and it was going to start a fire that was going to burn air and all the atmosphere was going to burn and it was going to kill all of humanity. When they tested that first bomb, that's what they believed was going to happen. But those crazy motherfuckers, those Americans, they fucking tested it anyway. They risked all of humanity's future to make that bomb. But there was a good chance and there was no way to know what was going to happen when they split the atom. When they split the atom, they thought that might create a fire that was going to be it was going to split the atom in air. And air was going to burn. That would be an unextinguishable fire because air would just burn just like paper all around the world, right? Makes sense. They took a chance and it didn't happen. And the bomb was fine. And this is science. There's no Walmart guarantee on the world, right? One of these things will destroy the world, right? And then there'll be a couple people surviving because they're underground or whatever. And they will repopulate the world because this is the way it works, okay? So we can't face evolution. No longer can we face us all dying and not being here, right? We'll get used to it because it's going to happen, whether you like it or not. Might be the Chinese causing it, but it's going to happen. Okay, so we should allow the scientists to do dangerous things. And when I say dangerous, I mean dangerous. But I'm saying dangerous in the sense that humanity has survived 1 million of these things. And we need to lead. Okay, look, don't be a fuckwad, okay? Give a gun, one gun on the floor, okay? It's a World War II scene. And there's a German guy there and you're there. Are you going to let him run and grab the gun first? Or are you going to run and grab that gun first? I'm not talking about gun control. I'm just saying a powerful weapon. Okay, are you just going to say, oh, I don't want to have that. And then he grabs it. And then he shoots you right away, right? You're going to say, oh, no, I shouldn't have control of a weapon that powerful because it's too dangerous. Well, the other guy's just going to fucking grab it. Okay, so, okay, now, okay, this is like so simple, right? Okay, yeah, so the keys to the car, whatever, the switch, whatever the fuck it is, the samurai sword, right? It's all the same. These scientific experiments are going to happen. Are you going to do them? Are we going to do them? Or is somebody else going to do them? Because they can destroy us anyway. But we'll never get the patents because we're going to fall behind in technology and they're going to pay. Just like, why is the West so rich? Patents, technology. Wake the fuck up. If we don't lead, we will follow. And you don't know what it's like to follow because you're an idiot, okay? Go to a country that doesn't have patents. Think about it for a while. Live there for a few months. Go look who sells the drugs. Where are they made? They're made in America. They're made in Japan. They're made in Germany. You're having to give a 20%, the cream of the crop. You're giving that extra 20% to a country that has the patent that created the technology. Everything you buy in a poor country is paying somebody else. You don't realize it because you live in a country that gets paid. So you're too dumb to realize that it's valuable. Okay? You don't want to be paying that to somebody else because it's not just the money. It's control of the future. It's your son goes to school and studies the latest technology because you have the patent and you have the ability to study the latest technology. If you let that go, what happens is you become a miserable, poor country who sends their kids over to the other country to study because you don't have the patents anymore. This is what is happening right now. We need to control. We need to allow these dangerous experiments to happen so our sons and daughters can be studying, so that we can be rich, so we can lead, so we can be a beacon of truth. We need to take the risks. Now, in a wise way, of course, but I think we need P4 labs doing insane experiments right now, allowing scientists to do these things. Look, we just need to say, okay, this is the King Midas. Shit is not easy to decide. Solomon, King Solomon, get all the fucking guys together. We say, okay, look, what crazy experiments do you want to do? And what experiments are you going to do anyway if we don't let you? And they'll say, well, we're just going to do this experiment because we can pay off the P4 lab in Wuhan and the 81 new ones they're making, and they'll let us do it over there. And then we say, we just have, the wise team saying, is that smart? Okay, we have a technology that could destroy the world. Okay, that's not good. But do we want this done in secret, overseas, in a country where the Communist Party controls technology, has access to all technology that's created in China? Or do we want a team of scientists that came up with the idea, that have the best chance of controlling it, because they are the ones leading in this new field? Do we want them to have control? Or do we want to have a bunch of people who don't know fuck all about it, but they're going to watch these guys doing their technology, get results of their research? Do we want them to have control of it, access to it? No. It's dangerous. So we want the smartest people who came up with it. They might be a Chinese team, but we want them to be leading. They want to do it, let them do it. Now, of course, we want to watch them and want to be smart, and this could destroy the world, all these complexities. But if you don't let them, they're just going to go overseas and do it, and then you won't have any access to it. Look, why? Okay, why is there now nuclear materials all over the world? It's because of Israel. Why is it because of Israel? It's because we would not let them get a bomb. So they had to go make a bomb underground. Now, when you make a bomb underground, you need to buy uranium, plutonium, all these dangerous materials underground. So they created a market for nuclear materials and nuclear scientists underground. Now, they made a bomb. People don't realize what that means. If you're smart, you understand what that means.
Put together on the internet.
What that means is that it's not just, you don't just go make a bomb. You need all the ingredients. All those ingredients were never for sale before. They were never made by anybody outside of a very tightly controlled group of basically, you go back to the original atomic bomb team, Feynman, and all these guys that made the hydrogen bomb, the nuclear bomb. They were the only ones. This was the most tightly controlled market in the world. All of a sudden, you have a black market market for materials. This is why the Pakistani scientist started selling things to North Korea. He was created out of this Israeli program. Now, we could say it's our fault, not the Israelis, because we didn't let them have a bomb. And so they went and made with their own bomb. But unfortunately, they had to make a market, like a flea market, in order to make their bomb, because they had to make it worth people's while to make the ingredients. They had to buy things. They had to steal things. They had to borrow things and then make their bomb, right? Seems so great that they got their bomb and we didn't approve it, and everybody's like, rubber stamp. Dude, you don't want a black market for nuclear materials. It's not good. Let the Israelis make their bomb, but control it. Would have been a smarter way to put off nuclear materials being free for another 50 years. It doesn't do it forever, but it would have bought us some time. Instead, we have crazy situation now, right? And it could definitely bite us in the ass. But this is how it works. This is how it works. Okay, so P4 lab, science, SJW is turning their eyes. Okay, now Harvard, all these fucking universities, they sent teams to Wuhan and studied everything. Okay, now this is where I break from everybody else who would talk about this. They're all going to say it's a conspiracy. Fauci was involved. All these guys were involved. Trudeau covering it up, and Harvard's covering it up. Why are they covering it up? They're covering it up because of you. You, and when I say you, I mean the population, did not let them do crazy experiments. So you forced our smartest scientists doing the most dangerous research to find a way to do their research overseas because you would not let them do it. These Harvard and Trudeau, they're in a tough position because we didn't let them do it, but they needed to do it. Okay? They needed to do it. Science needs to move forward, even at the risk of total disaster. And science will move forward. Science is relentless. You can't stop it. You with your laws, you with your guns, science will move forward. It's like life will find a way in Jurassic Park. Science will find a way. And you better believe it. Scientific mind, the human ingenuity, the desire, the curiosity of man, all bad things that you want to stop are going to happen. They're going to be tested. This is my message. So the best thing you can do is be a man, wise up, and accept it, and try to do the wisest thing you can do, and know that you might destroy humanity. Be mature, understand you're taking enormous risks, but if you don't, what will happen then? Most people, they just close their eyes. See, I'm very clean because I stopped this. I'm not looking over to my right, and so I'm clean. See, I'm right. We shouldn't do this. Scientists should not check this because it's too dangerous. And then meanwhile, you're just ignoring the fact that it's going to happen. And even if you die before it happens, it doesn't matter. It's going to happen after you die. It is going to happen. You just have to know it's going to happen. So man up, accept the fact that you want to make money, accept the fact that you're willing to risk humanity's future for a few bucks. Because you are, and you will, and somebody else will, right? Because science is partly about making money. It's partly about ego. It's partly about the desire to know. It's partly about curiosity. It's partly about man. It's partly about control. And we accept your greed, accept your anger, accept your curiosity, accept your inability to control yourself, accept your mistakes. And back to the P4 lab and that report, the CIA report, that motherfucking report was key because here's what it said was basically you had a bunch of guys who were untrained working in the lab. Now that you've heard my story of how China developed, you're not going to be shocked. You're going to understand that that's China's mindset for everything. And that was our mindset in 1900s, right? And that was correct. The problem is diseases. You want to have some control. You want the smarter. You don't want to just give a disease that could kill all of humanity to the dumbest guy, right? You want to give it to the smartest guy, right? So you want to have the experiments and you want to have some kind of balance between Sean's control and money and licenses and respect and the students up and coming and, their kind of cutting edge desire to take chances. You want that. You want the smartest balance between those two, right? And you need to be mature and accept responsibility. We need P4 labs. We need to license them out. We need to allow cloning right away. Cloning needs to happen tomorrow. Start cloning. Start making virus diseases, bioweapons in our labs, at our schools, right fucking now. Let scientists do what they're going to do. Find out every single thing they were doing in Wuhan and do it here. Because every single experiment that was happening there, face it, Be a fucking man. Face every dirty, dangerous experiment that was going on in Wuhan and accept that you were part of the problem. If all of us as a community could not accept cloning and disease, we couldn't accept it. We like this balance of not looking, you know what I mean? We like this kind of thing of not ignoring things. Stop ignoring things. Let it happen. Face it. Whatever was happening in Wuhan should happen in Harvard. Should happen in, MIT. We should allow this to happen here. And we should lead technology in the wisest way instead of letting it go to an unregulated, hidden. I'm not saying the Israelis didn't do what they had to do, but admit that these dynamics are always at play. And how we win is by facing, don't demonize Harvard, because this is all going to come out now, is everybody covered it up. And through this whole COVID outbreak, we knew scientists were, okay, look, tons of American scientists were in the Wuhan lab, Harvard students. They know there's bats in there, and they're not saying anything, okay? Trudeau, people know. Why are they not saying anything? Are they liars? No, it's partly your fault too. If they say something, then all of a sudden everyone's going to jump on them because no one looks at themselves. We're all to blame. They did experiments that we didn't let them do, that they had to do. We needed that to lead technology. See, here's what we do. We couldn't face the risk of these experiments, but we let them go to Wuhan, take the risk there, and then take the experiment, take the results of the experiment back to our labs and make drugs, right? That's how stupid we are. We're letting you didn't do it in our fucking basement, someone else's basement. Oh, you found out something good in this dangerous experiment that we wouldn't let you do. Well, then, welcome back. Welcome back. Patent that. Make money on this drug. This is the game that was going on, right? So Harvard, yeah, they went there. Yeah, they probably should have told. They knew more than they did. Fauci, yeah, he probably should have said. Yeah, Trudeau, there should have been a robust debate. But there was no room for the debate. Nobody was listening. Nobody wanted to hear. I could have made this episode 20 years ago. Like, I lived in China. I was fascinated by this whole thing of Westerners and the way China did it. This was not new to me. It's just that COVID hadn't happened yet. But the whole debate about patents and fear of risk and the arbitrage between, like, basically brilliance and money and control and laws and rigidity and how things grow. All these things, I saw them all. That's why I went to China. I love the Chinese way. I love I can fucking do it way. You know what I mean? So many times in my life, I've been that guy where I'm doing something that would not be able to do in America. My real estate company in China, I could have never done here because we broke so many laws and rules to get going. And the Chinese were totally fine with it, And then once we got big enough, we took some serious risks. Once we got big enough, then we went legit. And that's the Chinese way. They let you fight it out. They look the other way. They let you do it. They let you do those experiments. Maybe we need a don't ask, don't tell with experiments. Maybe we can't quite face it right away, but we just let them do things and we just ignore it while they're doing things that could kill us, right? And then once they come up with stuff, we use them and slowly we let the average person get mature enough to realize, that, the real life basically be a man, we let real people face real life, maybe that'll take time. Probably will. But anyway, so who's to blame? Who's to blame? It's a lot of dynamics. It's the French. It's our own idiocy. It's, partly like our trust in educators. I think they should have come out with everything right away. I think they should have said, wait a second here. Wuhan, they were studying bats there. I was in the lab. I saw the bats. I think people should have stood up and said that, and I think I said the moment this came out, I had read the report to the embassy. So I knew that they were like lax laboratory testing. They were leaving doors open. Okay, there's 4 doors in airlock in a P4 lab. They're very high technology. It's very difficult to get 4. It's the technology of building a lab is incredible. And they were leaving them all open so they could smoke. And they were having idiots with no experience. There were guys bringing in their girlfriends to show them experiments. I mean, they were breaking every fucking rule. And that was in the report and in other reports. And also I heard inside China, they basically were just doing it the Chinese way. They're just figuring it out. But unfortunately, they were working with very things that could kill all of humanity. So it's like a pilot. A pilot is very boring. You're flying a plane. It's very boring, but it's punctuated by, absolute terror. That's the quote. Because when you go into a mountain, right? So that's being a pilot. It's very difficult to stay, to pay attention because it's mostly boring. And then there's that moment when you all die, right? And that's the way a P4 lab is. You're looking at all these vials all day and you're bored out of your mind, month after month. But if you drop one, all humanity dies. That's how a P4 lab is. Not exactly, but basically. So that's why it's so hard to keep that discipline. And that's why we have so many rules for P4 labs, is because it's so hard. Humans are not built for this. We get lazy. We get drunk. We get tired. We get angry. We don't pay attention to those vials. We cut corners. That's why we have all these rules at a P4 lab. Because human nature is not good for... Basically, we need robots in P4 labs because humans are shit at it. But we've got enough controls in American, Western P4 labs. We were able to control it. But the Chinese, you give them a P4 lab with no experience. They did not have the background to know how dangerous. It took time. It took time. They're very clever. We couldn't have handled it either. It took all the development of the lab is where the educational process comes in, right? You hand it to somebody. They don't know where it came from. They don't have the calculations they don't have the people that died learning what it took to make that, right? The design. So you need that, right? So I can't really blame the Chinese because that's the way they grew their economy. But I kind of blame the scientific community, was a big hand in this. But hey, it's in the end, we got to just fix it. So what's going on today? Today, we need to face all these realities. We need to face that anything you give to China is going to end up in the hands of the military. Need to face that we all might die from the next experiment literally in someone's basement. If we don't let them do this, it could even be more dangerous than the P4 lab. That's the wake-up call. I'm going to add this in the end. P4 lab is nothing. At least they got all those airlocks and some people now with experience. We got CRISPR machines that can cut and paste genes now in people's garage. And people can create diseases that kill all humanity in their garage now. Shit's changing. We need to face this. We need to robustly face these challenges. And so the laboratory, the Chinese were totally lying. There was labs, there was live labs, there was live bats. I knew this from the very beginning. Let me just say what I was thinking. The very first day, called my friend Stuart. I said, look, Stuart was like, this thing was, from whatever he was saying from, bats. And I said, listen. The lab is hundreds of meters from the fucking market where we're supposed to come from. The lab was known for coronavirus research. This wasn't a secret. There was white papers everywhere. There was videos. There was live bat videos. They called her the Bat Lady, was in charge of coronavirus bats. She was called the Bat Lady. Okay. And they brought bats. They had bats in the fucking lab. Americans were there and saw the bats, and then there was some researcher who splashed bat blood in his face and posted it on social media. There was this was no secret. So a few hundred meters from this laboratory where bats were being tested, there was a bat virus, broke out, the disease broke out hundreds of meters from the only P4 laboratory in China that was studying bat viruses. What kind of idiot from the very first day could not see. I mean, it's like the smell of bread coming from a bread factory. Like, I wonder where the bread's coming from. This smells like bread. It couldn't be the bread factory. No. That's amazing chemicals. Smells just like bread. That smells like a chocolate factory. But it couldn't be the chocolate factory that's right over there. That's how stupid we all were. And then the Chinese, of course, they didn't want to get blamed for it. And honestly, when you look at the complexities of everything, you can't really blame. Nobody's really to blame here. We need to change a lot of things to fix this one. So this is not a blame China thing, or a blame Trudeau thing, or a blame the laws thing, or SJWs. It's we need to revamp our understanding of everything I've talked about. So get off your ass and either put on your blinders for the rest of your life, or let this sink in. Let this lesson. There's no easy lesson here. This is not one of the ones where you're like, I got it. It's usually like, you got this heavy burden of guilt when you finish this one. Because you realize you haven't been facing a lot of stuff. And there's a lot of heavy stuff going on. So let it go into your King Solomon brain and think about it, debate it, and map out trees, logic trees, come up with ideas and figure out a way that we can improve this shit. Because I think the West should lead in science. I would love to see this again. We invented science. I mean, really, it came from France. Science started, like if you read back to the beginning of science, it came from France and England, and Germany. Like, this is where science came from, the concept of science. And it came from the Middle East too. Like, read back about science, where it came from. There's a reason we want to lead in science. It's like good for us. It's good. Lead in science. Let's do it, man. Let's fucking do it. No longer do we outsource it and hide it. Science should be a goal of young men. We should be teaching people science is good, and real science, like science that I'm talking about here, not controlled by the politicians, not even like, whatever side you're on, man. Science, the moon, achievement, progress. This is where it's going anyway. Do you want to just not lead? Fuck that. I think we should lead. I think we should be proud. I think we should study. I think we should face it. We should come up with little boys and little girls should want to go to the next moon. They don't want to be a gender fluid, pink haired, tell me my correct pronoun person. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, people want to do that. Whatever the fuck, there's always going to be some outlier somewhere doing things. I'm not saying it's bad or good. Let people do whatever the fuck they want. But look, man, people, humanity wants to move forward. We have insane curiosity. We want to go at the speed of light. We want to travel to other universes. We want to create. We want to go into black holes. We want to create new sources of free energy. We want to see. We want to go where no man has gone before. What was the Star Trek? What was that?
To boldly go.
To boldly go. No man. We want to do this. There's going to be other people who are going to do other things. That's fine. They want to die there, whatever. But society, humanity, it's in our blood. It's in our blood. We've been letting it go. That's why this whole thing happened. All right, that's it.